So of course, as I said at the top of the show, you've kind of like headed this movement called No Free Coffee. For anyone who doesn't know what it is, what is it?
Yeah, man. So it's No Free Coffee is a lifestyle brand centered around coffee and experiences. Those experiences being like our pop-ups. When we started this, 2019, just kind of like crafting what this could be. And obviously the inspiration, being me and my wife going to Japan and wanting to quit our jobs and just open up a coffee shop, and then like kind of saying, well, hey, we can kind of like just do a little pop-up situation. That'd be tight. And honestly, I just want to hang out, bro. Like I like this, see all my friends that are doing cool shit. And, it seems like we only kind of hit the link, or the most time we spent with each other was kind of online through the gram. And I was just like, man, wouldn't it be cool if we could just like summon everybody in one space and just drink coffee and like get fly. You know what I mean? Like that's what we do anyway on the weekends. Like we go to, certain shops and get fly, and, we bump into somebody. Oh, then you got this. Oh, you got the situations on. Oh, that was good, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's really just like a celebration of that. And yeah, our pop-ups, we started doing our pop-ups in 2020, like in the midst of the pandemic. And it was just kind of like out of, damn, like we really want to bring this idea to the world, and people are still getting coffee. But in LA, we didn't want to be those people that, people looked at and said, oh, they're having like a super spreader event.
Yeah.
So I was like, damn, how do we like have an event, get our shit across without being those guys? And, the light bulb went off, AKA my wife was just like, yo, you seen this in Italy? They open up the wine windows back in their shit, and doing the research of like what the wine window is and like where that even came from. And for those that don't know, it came out of like the plague that happened in the early 1700s over there in Florence. And motherfuckers still wanted to get wine. You know what I mean? They still needed to get lit during the pandemic that they were going through. And they created the wine windows to, safely socially distance themselves. Me and my wife saying that, being like, oh, damn, some LA shit. This is hella cute. People are going to be like, yo, this is fire. And you can't say we're not safely social distance ourselves, because I was going to Blue Bottle every other day and they had the same shit up, basically just a shield. You know what I mean? I was like, yo, this is fun.
But I think when I saw it in 2020, that was the most interesting part. Was the actual installation was so interesting, because it was in the midst of like the height of the pandemic, and a lot of people were worried about these types of events. But it looked like yours was just like, it was like the first thing I had seen in a long time in LA, where people were literally just sitting around outside safely having fun though. Like it looked great.
Yeah, we got really lucky because people were definitely, the buildup of not coming outside into our first event was like, it was literally when LA was like, okay, the world is open. You can go get bread at the grocery store, bruh, and not feel bad about it. So people literally came to the event all at the same time after being cooped up. And it was just like a beautiful thing, man. Like everyone that hadn't seen each other in years was just like, just celebration, like that communion.
Yeah, no, I was there at the first one. I was really impressed by just the community you brought out off the first pop-up, and then also just how you guys built it out. I think the window was just something I hadn't seen before. And I was like, oh, this is like a really good way to kind of just deliver product and give people, experience, but don't have them, congregated in one space or anything like that. So I really love that concept for real.
Thank you. I think that came out of like, anybody could open up a coffee pop-up, but like, why are people going to talk about it after they leave? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
man.
I'm just like, yo, the presentation has to be on point. And, if we spend all our bread on this and don't make no money, but people are talking about it, then, building that brand equity was just super important to us. And shout out all my business partners, Vanessa, Alex, and Daniel, because, we definitely couldn't have did it without, the team and like putting it all together.
I'm glad you touched on like having something to talk about after the fact, because I think, the thing that I talk about the most about this brand is the clothing. Like, like I think you mentioned in one of your interviews, you were like, yo, the coffee's great, but the clothing really hits. And that is, the absolute truth. I have the hoodie on right now, actually, and I carry the bag around with me all the time. And people always comment like, oh, what's that? And I'm like, oh, it's like a coffee shop, but they got really good clothing. And they're like, oh, this is ill. So just tell me a little bit about that and just your thought process behind, having some fire ass merch.
Well, when we said we wanted to make apparel, and we kind of like hate that word merch. Like I don't get mad when people say it, because I know it's just like your mind is conditioned to say it's merch, because it's coffee first. And, if you kind of like whatever you sell after the coffee is considered merch. So that's why we want the shit to be like just great quality and like just to the highest level. Like I want people to be like, yo, who had the craziest hoodie of the year? Like, you know what I'm saying? And put all the streetwear names and brands in that bucket, and like, us to at least be in that top 5 conversation, And that just came from like genuinely being like, interested in the culture of like streetwear and like growing up. And I remember here in Tennessee, people had fake vapes in school. Like, there was only one dude that had real vapes. Like, you could not find them shits. Like, unless you know what I'm saying, had the plug or whatever. Like, it was wild. So just wanted to be engulfed in that, bro. And being thirsty kind of about it too, because being in an area where like we weren't in New York or in LA where you could just pull up to the Supreme store and like, you know what I'm saying, get your shit off. Like people just like selling shit in MySpace, I remember in school. So just being interested in that and wanting to like have that same level of quality as the coffee into the clothing. Right. And being sneaky about it is like, it's a lifestyle brand. We're just communicating through coffee type shit, which I thought was kind of fly.
Yeah, no.
And then going to Japan, man, and seeing curry up, like the best to do it.
That literally, I'm glad you brought that up because that was something I kind of like thought about too. Is just like, how in Japan, some of the most fire clothing comes from like the restaurants and like little pop-up situations. So like, I definitely took that from, I just saw that in what you guys were building. And then also I think just in the US now too, you're seeing like, Uncle Paulie's, like clothing and their hats popping up in different places. And like, there's real brand equity in a restaurant. And if you love the food or the drinks, you'll love the clothing as well.
Bro, you're tapped in because people could love a hoodie or whatever, but if they fall in love through taste and you're like touching one of their senses and they're like, yo, I love this because it makes me feel good. Like it genuinely makes me feel good. And then like, you look at streetwear brands and you're like, okay, everybody growing up wants a streetwear brand, like or wanted a brand or started a brand. And the biggest thing that people ask is why? Why am I copying this? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what's the why? And if you can say, yo, you got coffee, like we're going crazy with the coffee and showing you that coffee is in every lifestyle, including this one. Cause after you leave Union and cop your kicks, you're probably going to go down the street and get Blue Bottle. Yeah. And like, they not speaking the same language as us, but they got a good product of coffee that sits at the same level as like those Union ones that came out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's a very great point. I want to touch back on the coffee because I'm not a big coffee drinker, but I absolutely do enjoy you guys' menu. And your signature drink is the grapefruit Tootsie. Tell me a little bit about that.
On that right now.
Oh man, so yeah, you gotta send a bottle of that to LA.
Come on, man, it's in the mail right now. What you talking about?
All right.
The grapefruit Tootsie came from like our first pop up. We did a drink, a classic coffee drink called Espresso Tonic that, it's literally just espresso tonic and like a little, orange peel kind of situation to the zest. And I realized that was like one of the number one sellers because our friends don't know what the hell that is. Like I go to coffee shops and order that. And then the baristas are like, kind of impressed. Like, oh, dang, you want espresso tonic? Cool. Yeah, I'll make that for you. So I just want to introduce that to the world. That that's something that's, kind of sits on like a quality level or like a luxury level to my friends who may not know what that is. And we realized after that pop-up, like, yo, we don't have a $3,000 espresso machine every time. Like, how do we secure that every time for the pop-ups? So I was like, man, we got to make another drink. Like, we got to come up with something else that's similar to this. And that was just literally me in the lab. Shout out to my boy Belly, man. John was coming up to the crib every day. He used to live down the street from me in LA. And literally just like testing it out. Like I'll make it. He'd be like, nah, that ain't it.
Yeah.
Nah, you need to add more soda. Nah, where's the zest? I need to feel like, I really taste the grapefruit in it. And, really just in the lab cooking up. Just out of like, man, how are we going to like keep this going? And kind of accidentally came up with like our number one kind of proven product, which is outside of the clothing is like, people know what the grapefruit Tootsie is and they've never had it. We did our pop up in New York last weekend and people were like, oh, I couldn't wait to try the grapefruit Tootsie. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like that anticipation. So
that's fine.
Kind of like a happy accident.
Man, that's dope. It's funny. The taste kind of reminds me of like old fashioned. So I drink old fashions, or I used to at least. And now I'm like, all right, this is like the caffeine version. Kind of gives me a good little, pep in my step.
Yeah, man. It's the essence of that grapefruit.
So,
I wouldn't expect you to be an old fashioned guy, Josh. Wow, that's kind of crazy.
Oh yeah, man. If it was old fashions, like it's funny. Well, my progression with alcohol was vodka when I first started going to the clubs, then tequila because it was just cool. And then as I got into my 30s, I was like, oh, let me start sipping old fashions. This feels grown. Them shits was whooping my ass, man. So now
you make sure they put the orange peel in it and all that?
All that. I need it. I need the orange peel. That's a part of it. So then, since then, I've graduated to natural wines. So I feel, me, pinkies up.
The fanciness of the wine there.
Natties, as my boy Trayvon calls them.
But Mario, you mentioned, like living in Nashville and all that. Like I'm from Virginia, so like I feel the same way you did, where it's like, yo, we couldn't just go around the corner to Supreme and go grab like the latest shit. Like, can you explain like, or kind of just talk to everybody about like, what's the culture like in, you know, your hometown? Like, what was it like when you wanted to get fresh, or like, how did you guys learn what was really going on in the culture?
Yo, really just TV, bro. Like 106 in Park, you know what I mean? MTV, BET, and just being influenced by like all that shit. Like music videos play such a big role in fashion here. Right. Especially like, you know, seeing Dipset and they're like, damn, they're just like, they kind of just like how we dress. Like, that's crazy. And that was kind of like the break of like, yo, that's hard. Like they know what's going on some South shit, but they from Harlem, and realizing like that Harlem South connection, you know, is deeper than just Dipset. But, the culture was like, man, like, I felt like I always say people that lived here have like the best music taste, because we could tell you about people in like legends from Atlanta you've never heard of. But I can also be like, yo, I fuck with Cormega. Do you know about this? You know what I mean? Yeah. Or like even like deep West Coast cuts. So the culture was kind of all encompassing, because there wasn't like a real, you know, like identity. Like we had Buck, you know what I mean? And then I would say like the legend of the city is this dude named All-Star, Starlito.
Oh, yes, of course.
Like, that's the man, bro.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like that. He's really speaking for the city in terms of like, you know, the voice, the culture, the street shit, the get fly shit.
Yeah,
he's like our city.
He was signing Cash Money. He was signing Cash Money for a minute, and then I remember, you know, the greatest thing, or not even greatest, but I just remember Lil Baby coming out and saying Starlito is one of his favorite rappers, and he ended up putting him on his second project. And I'm glad you brought him up, because he's one of them like heroes and like underground legends that doesn't get his flowers enough. And man, that's glad to know that, you know, the city is holding him down like that.
Bro, he was spinning. I remember in freshman year, he had Grey Goose, bro. That song had Jeezy and Gucci. No, it had Jeezy and
Gotti, right?
I mean, Jeezy and Gotti on the same song, bro.
Because I remember Grey Goose was on the Yo Gotti Gangsta Grills, I Told You So. And he had a couple of joints with him up there before he changed his name. And again, like in Virginia, listening to that too. So it's like same way, like we picked up on the culture from different sides and from different parts of the country. But I mean, you know, you went to Japan and you've been to LA. Like what were you trying to bring from Nashville over to there, and vice versa? Like what were you trying to say? Okay, I'm gonna stamp this because this is what we do out in Nashville, and this is what I want to bring to LA or Japan or wherever. Yeah,
I think it was just for myself, man, with that energy, like coming from here, like, you know, you're taught to be super humble. You know what I mean? Like, it ain't like you're not the loudest person in the room. Like people get roasted for that here growing up. So really just bringing like that good, you know, just Southern hospitality and energy. What I want to bring back to the city though, I think that's what you're going to get at in the second question is like, just the culture, bro. Like all of the shit that like people are like, damn, like what's natural wine? Like there's not I don't even want to say that out loud, but there's not mad different natural wine spots out here, dog. Like you don't even know what that is for real. Like in LA, that's busting. So just bringing like the vibe, bringing the culture, like bringing my homies out here and showing them like Nashville's lit. Like we just got the biggest Soho house in America. You know what I mean? It's out here. Like that shit's crazy. They're bringing like programming at the spot is nuts. So I just really wanted to bring that energy back to the city, because it's like a wide open canvas. Like it's literally like you could paint whatever you want to paint here. And if it's dope, people will fuck with it. If it's not, people are going to let you know. One thing I love about Nashville people, like, bro, like Jay-Z or Kanye could be performing right in front of you on the sidewalk. People would not be impressed. Like, this is not a place where like people are easily impressed at all. And, you know, in the city, obviously there's a lot of tourists. There's a lot of new people from LA and from New York that live here. But one day I was going to get a haircut out east, like, and I was just realizing, bro, how vast the city was, like outside of like, you know, the shit that, you know, the flair that people see on the gram and shit. And I was just like, man, these people out east in the hood don't give a fuck about no free coffee or anything I have to bring. Like, it's literally just like, you know, it's that small town mentality of like, go to work, come home, eat, go to sleep, do it again. Right. So it's like, man, like that was a little daunting at first, but then realizing, you know, we just got to carve out our lane and figure out who our people are. Turn the city up.
No, I love that you're doing that. It feels like a little renaissance going on there too. Like, you know, you got that new store out there, the Trenches Gallery. My boy Jay Fields is out there flying the flag loud and proud. So I love what I'm seeing, man. I'm definitely looking forward to visiting soon.